Find other great podcasts like this one at podmoth.network.
Oh, hi! If you're looking for another spooky and funny podcast to add to your rotation, check out Anything Bones, now part of the Podmoth Network.
Hey Boneheads, I'm Sophie Schwartz.
And I'm Caitlin Hart.
And we're the hosts of Anything Bones, the podcast where we talk about bones and bone-related topics.
Soph, what are bone-related topics?
Thank you for asking, Caitlin. This can be anything from mausoleums to murderers, famous skeletons to cadaver dogs.
Bone churches, mummies, serial killers. You'll hear about them all.
And sometimes we have guests stop by and tell us their favorite bony tales.
Check out Anything Bones on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, or wherever your little heart desires.
We release new episodes every Saturday.
Bon voyage!
This podcast contains strong language and adult situations and may not be suitable for those who are easily offended. Welcome, fuckers. I'm Kay.
And I'm Jay.
And you're listening to the Fuck My Work Life podcast, where the work stories are real, the laughs are large, and most of us can agree, work sucks. So let's clock out and tune in.
Welcome back, fuckers.
Hey, fuckers.
How's everybody doing? I know we can't hear you, but I don't care.
We've got a special episode. This is actually our season closer episode.
Yes.
And we've kind of been teasing this for a while.
Yeah, it's taken a little bit to get it set up and going, but
glad we finally did.
Yeah, it's here.
It's happening. So we have got a special guest with us today. We are joined by Dr. Sai Islam, and you reach out to us because, tell us, introduce yourself. Tell us about what you do.
Sure. So I'm Dr. Sai Islam. I'm an associate professor of industrial organizational psychology at Farmingdale State College. In case you're wondering, what is industrial organizational psychology? I've never heard of it. It's a psychology of work. And in addition to that, I'm vice president of consulting at Talent Metrics Consulting. The reason I reached out is because I am a shameless self-promoter. Sometimes this is referred to as being a shameless whore. I don't know.
Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that. We're accepting of all people on the podcast. That's good to hear. But I have co-authored a book about leadership and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. One of the things that my co-author and I, Gordon Schmidt, are really excited about is helping people to become better leaders. I listened to a couple episodes of the podcast and I was like, oh, this seems cool. This would be a great way to kind of talk about experiences that real people are having in the workplace and maybe find ways to talk about leadership. And it also sounded like a lot of fun. So this is, kind of my hey, let's talk about a book and let's also talk about some of these great stories that your team is getting here.
Awesome. So you're consulting. Do you go into companies and be like, this is how you do your job better as a manager?
Sometimes. So some of my work is as an executive coach. And, you can't really just yell at people and be like, stop that. I can't roll up a newspaper and bop people in the nose. That's not really effective behavior change. But, you sit down, you chat with managers, and sometimes managers are not self-aware at all about how they're perceived. They have very much that Michael Scott kind of mentality where they're like, everybody loves me, even though I'm not organized and I can't explain what I want people to do, but they like me. And so that's really hard, is to kind of get them outside of themselves a little bit, to kind of consider how other people are feeling. People also get a lot of wrong ideas about what leadership should look like. In some cases, managers think that they have to be really, really tough on people because they think that their organization is like the military, and it's not. It's, you're running a mom and pop ice cream shop. I don't know if people, I don't think they want R. Lee Ermey from, Full Metal Jacket running, the local ice cream parlor. Like that just
Oh shit!
yeah, like I don't want people to be like, this is my ice cream cone, this is my gun. Like we don't want that particular attitude at the ice cream parlor, right? But people sometimes do that, and that's because they either have never been leaders before, they've never managed anything before, and so they kind of default to things that they know how to do. Whatever they've done that's worked for them, they've done, and that doesn't really help. And so, sometimes that we do that through coaching. Sometimes we, do training around how to communicate more effectively. We were just we just closed up a survey for an organization, and one of the big pieces of feedback that the organization got was that their leaders didn't know how to give feedback. They didn't know how to improve, and sometimes a very common thing that I see is that managers, leaders sometimes think that workers are just lazy. They're just there to kind of not do the work and get a paycheck and run out of there. And that's not my core assumption about, people. I think people who are in jobs generally, they want to do a good job. They want to feel good. And they want to be successful. They may not be committed to a lifetime of working, at Target or wherever.
Yeah.
But at least for the time that they're there, they want to do a good job. And the goal of a good leader a good manager is to kind of build a framework where you can perform as an employee, not, kind of fall to the whims of whatever your manager wants at a given time.
Right. Yeah. And I think having that feedback, hopefully positive feedback, but any kind of constructive feedback, I think makes people feel more worthwhile in their jobs, or like they're making a difference in what they're doing. And if you don't have that and you're just wondering every day, well, I don't know, am I doing a good job? Like I can't tell because my manager doesn't talk to me. It's frustrating.
Like your job as a manager is not to sit in your office sipping scotch and looking out the window like Jack Donaghy from 30 Rock, right? That's not the gig.
Yeah.
Your job is getting judged on how your employees are doing and, creating a situation where they're going to be able to perform. Part of that is sometimes, managers sometimes don't know what you're supposed to do on the job. They may not be familiar with the work itself. And so if they're not clear about what you need to do, they're confused and they're kind of like struggling with that. And sometimes in the work we do in terms of consulting is we help organizations kind of figure out, well, what does this work look like? What drives your business? Why do people go to your store? Why do, people, go to your website? What are they looking to do? And that can usually help managers help their employees perform, because that tells them, oh, this is what's driving the business. This is what I need to do. This is what I have to tell the employees to do in order for us to perform better.
Yeah. It's very interesting. I think a lot of times too, managers kind of get put in the position just because they've been at the company for a while, and then there's just no training as to how to lead people. And like you said, they're just kind of going off of what they think they should be doing instead of seeking out that help to be like, okay, so how do I do this successfully, and how do I motivate the people that are working for me? So
absolutely. And we see this a lot in organizations where they look at a really good individual performer and they say, wow, you're really a great salesperson. Now you should lead a sales team. But you never looked at like Michael Jordan and said, like, that guy should coach. He needs to stop playing and he needs to coach now. No, nobody would ever do that. That would be, you'd be like, oh, that's crazy. But we do this in organizations all the time, and we don't give people the support they need in order to actually be better and improve and learn how to help other people get better. So see that a lot.
So on that note, should we read some stories about some bad managers, bad leadership?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. All right. Are you ready to analyze these, Sai?
I don't know. I have to emotionally prepare myself for some of these.
So this one comes to us from Shanti from the Happy Hour News Team podcast. And they say, I recently tuned into your show and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. My story goes back a couple years when I was employed at a small welding fabrication shop. My grandmother had passed away, and I took the day off to attend her funeral. The following day, our secretary asked if I wanted to use vacation for the day I had missed. I said no, I have bereavement leave that I was going to use. She then informed me that the company doesn't offer bereavement. I said, look at page 16 in our employee handbook. You gotta love an employee that knows the employee handbook. Because most leadership doesn't.
Yeah.
Nope.
After about 10 minutes of her scanning the handbook, she said that they were in the process of changing the handbook. WTF. Let's fast forward a year, and my father passed away on a Tuesday. I was allowed to be with him when he passed, but was expected to be at work the very next day. The rest of the week was hell. I couldn't concentrate or do my job to my satisfaction or to my boss's, which was made abundantly clear. We even had to schedule the funeral for a Saturday since I couldn't take off work. This is horrific.
Yeah.
This is really bad. And I really wonder, in terms of the decision making, did the company get the kind of work productivity that they thought they were going to get out of this poor guy who's grieving?
Right?
Exactly.
You know, why not just take the loss on work productivity and let this poor man grieve, and let him come back next week? I really wonder about what the decision making process here looks like, and I'm genuinely surprised that he actually went to work.
Yeah.
You know, we mentioned earlier that the workers that are here, they're not trying to screw anybody. They're not trying to get out of something. This is a genuine effort, and if you hear about this, you think to yourself, like, J&K, like, don't you want to work with somebody like that who's that dedicated, that actually still showed up, even though, and it's just sad. Wow.
It is sad. Yeah. I mean, I feel like so many of us, kind of because we have to, make work the top priority in our life when really our humanity should be the top priority, First his grandmother, then his father, and he goes to work the next day. And like you said, there's no way he's going to do a good job. But he's probably terrified he's going to lose his job if he doesn't show up, and he probably has a family to feed. And it's insanity. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
All right, a couple more sentences from this. I got to the point that I was so fed up, I actually applied for another job while sitting in the break room eating lunch. I was hired on the spot and put in my 2 weeks and never looked back. Like, good for you two for also putting in your 2 weeks and not just marching out the door. Like, at least they've got integrity, whether the company deserved it or not. Like I said, I enjoy your show and look forward to future episodes. And yes, I drink because I work. Ugh. That's awful.
It is awful. And the behavior that's here, like searching for a job while you're at your job, is something that happens more often than companies think. I will say that for any of your listeners that are doing that, you just got to be careful, because anything that you do on the work computer, the company has legal access to. Yeah. Which always surprises me, because from what I've heard, there's some research that seems to indicate that adult film viewing is very high during work hours.
Which is so crazy to think about. Like, who is sitting at work watching porn?
Yeah.
Besides, like, a dude who his job is to edit porn.
Yes. That would be, I would be so embarrassed if somebody caught me doing that. I don't know. Like, that's real guts. That's a true story of courage, I think. But that's the thing. Like, you're losing that productivity. The employee's not happy. And then in this story, you could tell that the leader wasn't happy. The manager wasn't happy. Well, maybe you need to adjust your expectations and understand that your employee is also a human being, and you need to get things done, but your employee also needs, to kind of live their life. And you'll notice that in a lot of leadership theories, one of the leadership theories that we talk about in our book, Leaders Assemble, leadership of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I hope everybody noticed this very subtle plug.
Yeah.
Where I immediately went into my radio talk show voice. That I've been practicing this whole time. In the book, we talk about something called servant leadership. And in servant leadership, the idea is that you as a leader, your goal is to move the things that are in the way of your employees out of the way. You basically serve them so that they can perform and do the work effectively. And so this is one of the things that makes servant leadership so appealing, is because it ties what the leader does to what the employees do and gives them a really clear goal that, well, my employees need X, Y, and Z. I'm going to do it. I'm going to find a way to solve this. I'm going to find a way to fix whatever the issue is. And I'm going to create a space where they can perform.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think too, it sounds like it might be a smaller type of company, and something like that, giving the guy the days off to grieve, deal with his stuff, you're going to create a more loyal employee that wants to work for you, that is going to show up in the times, maybe he needs to cover for someone else or whatever. And because he was shown that courtesy before, it's probably going to be more willing to do that. And you're going to build probably a more stable company that way, but I feel like so many leaders just don't understand. They don't get it. And I'm sure they've all been in that position before too, so it's like they kind of forget what it was like.
Some of that is also that leaders themselves are feeling a lot of pressure, right? Mm-hmm. Leaders are under a lot of stress. They have to get things done. And sometimes they don't have that attitude that they need to step in and, be the ones that are going to support the employee through this difficult time period. Especially, I actually noticed that a lot of the stories that you have come from organizations that are a little bit smaller. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they're small businesses and things like that. Part of the reason for that might be that once a company hits about 100 employees, a lot of employment law comes into effect. Mm-hmm. And they really have to start putting in mechanisms to manage things in a little bit more of a formal way. Yeah. That isn't to say that silly, kooky, wacky things don't happen in big organizations. Mm-hmm. We've consulted for some large organizations and heard some interesting stories. As a consultant, I sign NDA or non-disclosure agreement, so I can't mm-hmm. tell those stories. Otherwise, I will be assassinated by a group of lawyers.
A group of lawyers, yeah.
But you still see that, but I think it's a little bit more prevalent in small businesses where managers can do what they want. And in some cases, those business owners are really, really good at whatever it is they're doing, whether they're a restaurateur, whether they're, an artisan, whether they're, construction, whatever it is, they're really good at that. And they just aren't really aware of how to manage and how to effectively manage a team or a business. And so we see that in a lot of cases.
Yeah. And I think like in this situation, I think a lot of managers, they get pressured by the numbers. Like this is a fabrication and welding shop. So they're producing items that are going to go out of the shop. And a lot of managers don't have the foresight that if you give this guy the couple days or girl, the couple days that they need to grieve, they will appreciate that, come back and want to work harder for you. Instead, like you didn't have the foresight to see that. You just saw the bottom line of what is going to get pushed out the door, which what was pushed out the door was probably shit because they were grieving while they were working. And then you got a 2 weeks notice. And now instead of just dealing with no production from that one person for a couple days, you now have to find someone to fill that hole.
Train
it's not as easy as people think you can't just plug people into someone who's done this job for a while. You can't just plug them in and expect that hole to be filled.
Absolutely. And actually listening to the way you described, the company, it reminds me of, have either of you watched the show Andor on Disney Plus, the Star Wars show?
No.
Not yet,
no. Okay. So, mild spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen Andor yet. But there's one of the characters gets sent to a prison colony that looks like a factory. And it's basically they're building parts for the Death Star. And I think that some manufacturing companies, if they watched those scenes, which are basically prison scenes where people are forced to work as hard as they can for a long 12-hour shift, they might have said, "Oh, this looks great. Look at that productivity. Look at this labor. They're getting so much out of it." But do we really want our businesses to look like that? Not really.
No. Do you want to read it? The next one?
Okay. Hey guys. So I have a funny story about when I was working at Blowout Video.
That's a name right there.
There you go. The guy who hired me was named Dino. Just let that soak in. He was a slob and clearly in over his head. Apparently you had to be 18 to work at this store, but he didn't pay attention and just assumed I was about to be 18. I still had about 8 or 9 months left of being 17 at the time I was hired.
Can I jump in 1 second here and just remind everybody, please get birth documentation when you hire people so that you know how old they are and whether it's appropriate for them to work at these places.
Like, what would happen? Would they get just fined? Would they get shut down? Would it depend on how many offenses? Do you know?
It might depend on the number of offenses. It also depends on the type of work. Because I remember I used to work at a grocery store, and they had me working late nights, even though I was like 15. I was working till like 2 a.m. on weekends because nobody else wanted to. Yeah, nobody else wanted to do it, and I was not smart enough to say no. That's on me, guys. I should have said no. I was saying no to drugs and not to late night shifts at the supermarket. But that happened. So you've got to be careful because sometimes that ends up being a violation, and then you've got the EEOC on you.
Yeah.
I'm guessing with the name Blowout Video, I'm guessing there was a section in the back that sold adult movies that you had to be 18 to technically rent out.
I'm sure there was. Anyway, one Saturday I showed up at work and the place was closed. This was only a week or two into my job and I had no idea what to do. My coworker showed up and said, "Let me call Dino." I waited for her to call and was told Dino was still in bed, but we could go to his house to get the key.
Oh, geez.
So our boss, who was supposed to be at work with us, still wasn't out of bed, and since I was the only one with a car, I had to drive to his house to pick up the store key and get the alarm code.
This just sounds like the beginning of a murder podcast.
Yeah. Luckily, he didn't live far away. His roommate answered the door and called for him to come downstairs. I waited a few minutes in their filthy house. I can deal with a mess, but when there are multiple plates with old food and cigarette ash all over the floor, I'm in full disgust mode.
Is this a hoarder house or is this the boss's home? Like, what is
both?
it?
Yeah, probably both. Which is also kind of like a psychological thing. You can tell a lot from a person. I say by looking at their car, look inside of their car. If it's like McDonald's bags and Coke cans in the back seat where there's no foot room, their house is not going to look much better, and they probably don't carry themselves much better either.
You're never going to be in my car, Jay, ever. I can't level of judgment.
I think too, like if you can't deal with your everyday life, how are you going to handle like managing people and a business?
Well, I mean, managing a Blowout Video.
Well, it's still a job. You still have people that rely on you. Maybe.
Finally, he came downstairs. Was he clothed? Why would he be?
Oh, gosh.
Nope. He thought it was appropriate to traipse downstairs in his big pale gut hanging over his saggy and stained tighty whities.
Ew.
In my memory, he was scratching himself.
Oh my gosh. Just a pro tip for everyone. Invest in a robe that you can drape over yourself. It has nothing to do with psychology, it has nothing to do with business. Just in general, a nice robe.
Just good advice, good general advice. Also, what if the female employee was the one that ended up showing up for the key and he comes down like that? Like,
In my memory, he was scratching himself, both his butt and his balls.
Oh, God.
But that could just be comic relief I made up to embellish for my own amusement. He then had to sift through the mess on his coffee table for the one key ring with one key on it to give to me. That took a few minutes. Then, since he didn't have a paper and pen, I had to memorize the alarm code. He couldn't just write it on like a pizza box with the marinara sauce that was left over.
Oh, boy.
He sent me on my way and said he would be there soon. We were now at least an hour late in opening the store. I was 17 years old, and this guy had to have been in his late 20s. That's when I learned that just because you are of a certain age, it doesn't mean you are an adult.
That's funny now. I think late 20s, they're just a baby.
Yeah. I know.
You know, as a 40, guy who turned 40 a couple years ago, yeah, I definitely, they are babies. And, I teach college kids, undergrads, and they look really young.
Yeah.
I feel old, but they just look like babies to me always.
Yeah.
So this story is really interesting because it got me thinking about the two big things that like leaders and managers are responsible for. And in our book, Radio Announcer Voice coming in, Leaders Assemble, Leadership in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we talk about the two big things that leaders are responsible for, which is like getting the work done, which this person definitely didn't do because they didn't give the key, and then managing relationships, right? Like creating an environment where you feel comfortable going to the boss and setting the right norms. What message are you sending to your employees when you traipse downstairs in your tidy whities? Probably not a good one.
No.
I can't imagine it's a good one.
I don't know if I would want to continue working for this person if I were in this situation.
Who still wears tidy whities?
I'm sure a lot of people do.
I'm sure people do.
But
I thought society hasn't left the tidy whitey behind.
Yeah, it's still around.
Yeah, I know.
But you don't wear it in front of your employees with nothing else.
Yeah. There, like that definitely violates the dress code. And in certain contexts, that could be a sexual harassment violation that you definitely don't need.
No.
Yeah. Would it? I mean, yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're on your work site, right? If something like this happens with your superior, you could still. I don't know if Blowout Video has an HR department, but
I doubt it.
Probably not.
It still seems very, very, very inappropriate.
Yeah, and with regards to like sexual harassment, there are two kinds. One kind is where the environment is sexually charged, right? That's called hostile work environment. And so even, if you go to your boss's home and it's presumably a work visit, professional on some level, that would still be kind of a violation. Yeah. So basically wear your pants when you are speaking to your employees. This is my very deep, insightful advice to everybody.
Yeah.
Also very good life advice. You should put that on a t-shirt.
And
wear your pants.
And also, I don't think it matters like if it was a guy or a girl who went to his house.
No.
Like you walk downstairs itching your ass crack and your balls in your whitey tidies. Or tidy whities, whitey tidies, and your tidy whities. That's borderline. I mean, I don't even think it's borderline. That's like it doesn't matter if I'm a dude and you're a dude. I don't want to see the impression of anything through tidy whities.
I just meant this sounded like the other girl that worked there was probably also a young teenager, and if she had gone to that house by herself and witnessed that. It could have been a very scary situation. Not that it wasn't scary for this person, but just so good. I wonder what happened to that person. Is that the end of the story?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I've never heard of Blowout Video, so I'm guessing it didn't expand.
Yeah.
They didn't. After Blockbuster went down, they didn't make it.
Yeah. Oh, R.I.P. video stores.
I wonder if Blowout Video is like code for Blockbuster.
Could be.
Maybe.
Could be. I don't know.
But there were a lot of smaller
Yeah.
chains and independent video stores back in the day
Yeah.
when people did that kind of thing and rented movies. That story actually came to us from our friend Dustin Holden from Dustin Can Read and Watch and the Rewatch Recap podcasts.
In a world with so many movies to choose from, one man has created the go-to podcast for reviews of hot and trending movies, so you know what's worth your time. The Movie Wire Podcast with host Justin Henson. Hear Justin's movie verdict wherever you listen to podcasts. Tune in to The Movie Wire today.
Okay, so here's another story. This one's pretty crazy too. We found this one on Reddit, and there was a lot to choose from on Reddit with just the bad manager threads, and it was kind of hard to sift through and find one. I mean, just one that was good because there's so many, but I liked this one. This one comes from orphan babies. So I used to work
already starting off on a good note with orphan babies.
Orphan babies. I used to work in high pressure sales. Once a week, the director would come in, and to get everyone energized, they brought in monster drinks. She'd leave them in her office for the salespeople to have. Now, I liked the director. She was nice and professional. My manager, on the other hand, was a piece of fucking shit dirtbag.
Kay, can I just mention that when you said that sounded so pleasant. It was just like, oh yeah, he's just a POS dirtbag. This is great. Wow.
Just a piece of fucking shit. I got tired of drinking energy drinks. Those things are so bad for you too. So I decided to not participate this one week. My boss came to me and said, "You didn't get a Monster. You know Wendy. Let's call her Wendy. Brought these for the entire division." I said I was aware of that, but I didn't want one. He came up to me and said this, "Listen, go into that office and get one right now." I was so stunned that I didn't know what to do. So I got up, grabbed a can, walked back to my desk, and just left it sitting there. He came back and asked why I didn't drink it. I told him I didn't want to have one because my body doesn't do well with so much caffeine. He asked me to walk into his office. I wonder why this guy's so hung up on the monster drinks.
But what if the director brought crack for everyone?
So Jay, I'm glad you're bringing this up because doesn't this sound like a weird back to school special where the workers are like, "Don't you want to be cool like the rest of us and take your Monster energy drink?" You know, I'm waiting for Nancy Reagan.
Doing it.
Yeah, I'm waiting for Nancy Reagan to appear and say, "You don't have to have a Monster energy drink if you don't want one."
And then the one young person takes a sip and then goes crazy and jumps out the second story window and dies. Like,
yeah,
Monster madness.
Yeah,
practically writes itself.
Okay. Now, I wasn't the best at my job. In fact, I hated it. He stated to me that my lack of energy is extremely distracting to him, not to the team, him, and that it shows in my performance. He ended it with, "If you keep this up, we may have to let you go. If you keep up not drinking Monster energy drinks." Seems like a strange job description.
This is like my mom trying to get me to finish my plate of food when I'm a kid. Like, there's no TV until you finish your food.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get a paycheck until these Monster energy drinks are done, young man.
All I said to him was, "Okay, well, that's unfortunate, but I will not drink something that takes a toll on my body." Like, oops, good for you. I closed out my thing. Okay. Lo and behold, I ended up getting fired. I enjoyed 2 weeks of unemployment until I got a call back from the same company. They wanted to hire me for a different position, not sales. Why not just transfer? No interview and higher pay. I took it and I loved it. I've since moved on to a better opportunity. Now, my ex-boss, he ended up being terminated for drug use, cocaine and meth. Shocker.
You don't say.
Was that what was in the Monster Energy drink this whole time?
Well, when the director cut the Monster Energy drinks, he had to do something.
Yeah. She's like, that one guy just wouldn't take it, so I had to stop bringing in the monster drinks.
Yep, the director stopped bringing in monsters, so he brought in Coke and meth.
Yeah.
It's on my desk if anybody wants some.
No, you have to. You have to do it. All the cool salespeople are doing it. He actually had the audacity to request me to be a friend on Facebook. I didn't accept, but I heard from my prior sales coworkers that he was asking for money.
Oh, geez.
Wow.
So it looks like things went very, very poorly.
Mm-hmm.
And it that ended like an after school special, actually. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, the pusher ends up on the street.
Well, the monster was the gateway drug. And now
after a monster, you got to go to Jolt Cola. Or, God, I'm really dating myself with that reference. Everybody's gonna think I'm 100 years old. And I'm like, Jolt Cola.
Oh, I remember Jolt.
Yeah, did they even make it anymore, or no? Is it gone? I know there were rumors where it was like it was like, outlawed.
It was like the crack of the 80s.
Illegal.
Oh boy. So this was actually really an interesting story because the managers are trying to get you to do a good job, but they're focusing on totally the wrong, thing. They're not like looking at your sales numbers, asking how your client interactions went. They're just like, no, shut up and drink this.
Yeah.
And, it's like everybody's Popeye, but their spinach is Monster Energy drink.
Right.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
But I think that happens a lot with managers. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, if they make you wear certain shoes and drink Monster Energy drink, you got to be mindful of that. You got to get out of that company.
Yeah. What was it? Air Jordans?
Was it?
I think so.
For Heaven's Gate, I think it might have been.
Yeah. Very strange.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. But there's a lot of managers that do that though. They just look for what's the easiest solution for me. Mm-hmm. So that now the responsibility is on them. And how you come up with bring Monster Energy drinks in, and now if someone doesn't perform, it's their problem because I brought monsters. Like I don't know how that clicks with people, but
guys, I did everything I could, literally everything. I brought you as many Monster Energy drinks as I could possibly get.
I got the red monsters.
There were different flavors, you had options.
I didn't cheap out on it. This is not from Costco, individual packaged drinks. But that a lot of times people, if you don't understand how the sales actually works, you might say to yourself, oh, when I was really jacked up on energy drinks, I felt better about selling. Everybody's going to feel the same way, but that's not true. And so having a sense of like, oh, here's what, here's what's really going to help my employees, and here's what's going to make the job easier for me, would have saved this person a lot of time and trouble. Also, not getting addicted to meth would have helped.
Yeah,
probably.
That's probably the downfall right there. The ultimate downfall. Yeah, we've had over the past couple years a lot of stories about just bad bosses, bad management, and a lot of it just comes down to, I feel like, lack of respect, just lack of respect on, again, not recognizing that these are human beings working for you. And I'm sure you deal with that a lot.
Yeah, sometimes it's interesting, the lack of respect thing. Sometimes managers feel like they should always have answers for everything. And sometimes the best thing you can do as a manager is to sit back and listen, because your employees are out in the field, they're interacting with people, they're, they kind of understand the lay of the land, and it isn't important for you to have all the answers as much as it is for you to maybe listen to what's happening out there and to use your expertise to guide those employees. Yeah. I think sometimes we put a lot onto leaders and onto managers. We have a lot of expectations of them. But managers themselves have to really think about, well, what's going to be best for the work that I'm, that we're trying to accomplish. And depending on the type of organization that you work in, sometimes the goal is to like build relationships within the organization and not necessarily perform. So some managers are really interested in moving up to whatever the next level is, and so they're focused more on, well, how do I get to the district manager level? How do I make sure I impress this person? Let me push everybody as hard as I can, and then move up.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're really interested in leadership, and the way we talk about it in our book is that you don't need the formal title to be a leader. If you are somebody that's trying to create or influence somebody within the workplace, either through your expertise, by providing support, by giving advice, you're engaging in leadership. And so it's broader than just, oh, I've got the title, I'm the one in charge. Both of you might have worked in places where there was somebody that you worked with who didn't have a managerial job title, but you went to them with questions because they just knew more, or you respected their opinion or thought very highly of them. That person was engaging in leadership without a job title. We see this a lot in a variety of different organizations and teams. That's part of the reason that Gordon and I wrote our book. Part of it is because we're huge nerds and love the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but also because leadership, for many managers, it's a very sensitive topic. It's hard for, in my executive coaching work, sometimes it's really hard for managers to be able to step away from their own issues and problems and be able to say, well, this is what I need to do differently. But when I've asked them to watch a Marvel movie, and they look at me like, are you crazy? Why do you want me to watch Captain America for a couple of hours? I said, well, just watch it and think about it, and then we'll talk about it. It's easier for them to think through the challenges of a super soldier than it is for them to think about being like the CFO of a company. But then they can reflect on it and they can say, well, oh, okay, this is what happened in the movie. This is kind of like what I'm going through in my workplace, and this is my experience now. And, I kind of wish that all the managers that we talked about had the opportunity to at least reflect and get more out of their managerial experience and their experience with their employees, because their employees sounded like they were kind of dedicated at least, and they could have had a much better experience on both for the employee and for the manager.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you, when you go into places, do you usually have like a Marvel character that you're like, all right, this is the person that this person needs to watch, or this is the movie this.
So I'm an old nerd, and that means that when I was a kid, nobody liked the stuff that I liked. So it's very funny to me now to see everybody like everything's Marvel. You can't escape it. And it's really funny to me because when I was a kid, I got made fun of all the time for it. So when I go into organizations and I talk to leaders, sometimes it takes some convincing to, get them to see like, oh, if you watch this movie, or if you think about this, or if we, think about this example, it might be relevant to your work. So you really have to pick and choose the types of organizations where you can do that. I was doing some executive coaching with a organization, like a healthcare organization, and they were very, very serious. They were very formal. Healthcare is a pretty serious industry, and I couldn't possibly roll in there and be like, hey, who's a great leader? Rocket Raccoon. You should be more like Rocket Raccoon, because they would like put me into a cannon and shoot me into space.
Yeah.
The industry just doesn't match. But there are some companies that we work with that are like in the tech industry or in other areas where they're like, oh, that sounds fun. Let's talk about that. This is a good example for me. I'm interested in this. And that generates a lot of conversation. I will say that the reception of the book has been really fun because all these folks who really like Marvel stuff or just like pop culture, they can see leadership there. And our book is part of a series where there's one book about Star Wars and leadership. There's another about Game of Thrones and leadership that's coming out next year. There's one about Harry Potter and leadership. So you can see it in any kind of pop culture that you want. The goal is to kind of match the pop culture with the industry, the organization, and with leadership. And I found that my students seem to like the examples quite a bit, because then they don't have to hear my boring examples about like Lee Iacocca or Steve Jobs or somebody
Right.
else. And, for us, Steve Jobs is a very contemporary reference, but if you're talking to Zoomers, they just look at you like, who is that guy? I'm like, the guy who created the iPhone. Like, what do you mean? Who is that? They have no clue. So
Yeah.
This podcast is also about making everybody feel old. Congratulations.
I feel like we do that a lot during our podcast. That's really cool. Do you have a favorite Marvel leader?
So I've been asked this a number of times, and I always end up saying Black Panther.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the reasons why is in his movie, he appears in a couple of movies, and he engages in one behavior that I think is really important, which is he reaches out to his enemies. So usually when you think about superheroes, you're like, yeah, this hero beat the crap out of this villain and then they won. But the character of Black Panther consistently, he chooses not to kill, and in many cases, reaches out to his villainous counterpart and he says, look, I understand where you're coming from. Let me help you. And that's a really, really deep thing that I think, especially given the way that we see conflict in like a social media soaked world, and the way that we see, conflict play out in our work lives and our personal lives. If you had a leader that disagreed with you and still sat down and said, well, I don't agree with this, but let's talk about what we can do. Let's find common ground. That would be a great leader. And I think that would be incredible to be able to see more of that in organizations. And I think a lot of people will be really inspired by it.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and kind of analyzing these stories that we shared. Before we sign off, tell everybody where they can find your book, if there's a place to follow you so we can get these new books that are going to be coming out.
Yeah, sure. So I waste an enormous amount of time on Twitter. So okay. I'm at Twitter at IOSY Islam. IOSY Islam, that's me. You can find my colleague, Dr. Gordon Schmidt. He is at IO Psychology. He's also on Twitter. And then you can find me on LinkedIn. I think I'm the only Psy Islam on LinkedIn. Not a very common combination of names. So you can definitely find me there. And then for the book, you can find our book, Leaders Assemble, Leadership in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, at Amazon, any place where books are sold. This is my first book ever. And one of the craziest things was I saw the book on Walmart and I was like, I didn't even know they were selling it at Walmart. Like, wow. So that's been really cool and very exciting. And I want to thank both of you for letting me hang out with you and talk about work stuff. Industrial organizational psychologists are, generally speaking, huge nerds about work. And we really like hearing, even these like very strange stories are a lot of fun. And so when I heard about your podcast, I was like, oh, this is a good idea. This is fun for an industrial organizational psychologist to kind of hear kooky stories about what happens in the workplace.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. And if you have any non-NDA stories you want to share, send them our way.
Well, see, I got to talk to my lawyer first about this.
Exactly. We don't want to get you in trouble, but all right, everybody, go buy that book and check out Cyan Gordon, right? Gordon is your co-writer. Yep. Check out their books. What's the name? One more time.
Leaders Assemble. Sorry.
Who's gonna? We're just fighting to say the name of this book. It is Leaders Assemble: Leadership in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or Leadership in the MCU.
Awesome! Thank you so much. All right, bye, fuckers.
Bye, fuckers.
Thank you for listening to the Fuck My Work Life podcast. If you enjoy the show, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. You can support the show by telling your friends or joining our Patreon. We also have some sweet Fuck My Work Life merch available over at Teespring. All links can be found in the show notes. Send your workplace stories to fmwlpod@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail at 310-818-3273. Be sure to follow us on all the socials at FMWLpod. And remember to support indie podcasts. They work hard to bring you a variety of amazing content. Until next week, Bye, fuckers.
I don't know about you, but with a busy work schedule, I never have time to sit down and read. Luckily, there's Newsly. Newsly is an all-in-one audio super app for iOS and Android. It picks up articles about the most trending topics on the web and reads them to you in a natural human voice. For the first time ever, the entire web becomes listenable, all in one place. You can browse articles from topics you choose and just start playing. Follow specific topics from sports, tech, business, science, or Bitcoin. Newsly will find you the latest articles and read them aloud. They even have digital radio. And do you want to know the best part? They have podcasts. Explore trending podcasts from over 80 countries. And you can find our podcast, Fuck My Work Life, there too. Download and try Newsly for free by visiting www.newsly.me or clicking on the link in our show notes. And be sure to use promo code FWL for a 1-month free premium subscription. Stop scrolling and start listening with Newsly.